and welcome back to AskALLi member Q&A with me and with Michael Ronn. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Orna. How are you this month?
Yeah, really good. It's May in England, which is, I mean, they write poems about it. It's the nicest month here by far.
Is it?
It's absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, weather is starting to improve and everything's green and gorgeous. What about you? How are you doing? You're looking like you have a new location there.
Yes, I'm in my new studio, so I'm still kind of renovating some things, but I have a new place where I'm going to shoot my YouTube videos and also write. So I moved into the new house and life is good.
That's fantastic. Brilliant, Michael. Good stuff. So we have a lot of questions. I think
Yes,
we
we
should
do.
maybe just get to it. What do you think?
All right. So our first question is from Julie, and she writes, my nonfiction is in a specific niche, finance for UK school leaders. I've just published the third book, so I'm reviewing my promotional strategy. Can you recommend which channels would be the most effective? And she goes on to say she's using LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. But she says that teachers tend to disguise their profession on social media due to safeguarding. So Facebook ads are unlikely to work. How would you recommend that I reach my target audience of teachers and educators?
Yeah, so this is a really good question because it's good for everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
It's good for everybody who, sorry, I needed to plug in my headphone there. It's a good question for everybody who's in a very niche area, which really, you know, we say everybody should be in as niche an area as possible. And nonfiction in particular, when you get very, very niche, it's actually a very good thing. So there is no easy answer to this question. There's certainly, I can't say off the top of my head, unless you can, Michael. Julie used this particular platform. It's a research job, it seems to me. It's a matter of you finding out where these people hang out online, and it might not be one of the big social media platforms necessarily at all. You might be better off going to an association, for example, like ALLi. A lot of people come and network on our forums because they know authors hang out there, for example. So doing something like that, I think it's, I think without knowing a little bit more and actually doing the research on your behalf, it's a research job. What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, I agree. That's such a specialized niche that I think you and I don't have much experience in. But, maybe there's some merit to reaching out to universities that do teaching programs. And maybe if you can find a professor or someone that would be open to self-publishing and might be willing to carry your book or use your book as a teaching instruction, because it sounds like a pretty important topic, right? Finance for teachers. And I think teachers all over the world would enjoy that. And so although it's not a sexy topic, I do think there's a need there. And so maybe that could be a route you could go as well.
Absolutely. And it's, it's a really good question to raise, I think, because I think it's very important that we recognize the big general platforms are great if you're doing big general publishing. So the more you are, if you're doing standard fiction sort of stuff, if you're doing big mass market nonfiction, then social media as we know it and define it, the LinkedIn, the Facebook, the Twitter, Instagram, depending on Pinterest, depending on which way you're kind of targeting your material, they make total sense, and it makes sense for establishing you as an author brand. But when it comes to actually shifting copies of your books, you're moving out of that more general sort of marketing specifically into what we call promotion, then finding niche platforms is a much better way to go. So while it takes a little bit of time to track them down, it's very worthwhile doing that, I think.
Yep, definitely. And Beth Coleman Warner comments, she says, in the States, it is tough to break into school and university libraries, associations for educators, groups on LinkedIn, networking, research to make contacts at the university level. So, well, good point. It can be tough to get into those libraries. They're notoriously difficult, but sometimes the professors can be open-minded, and you never know what they might do. So.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Beth. That's great. And hello, always there with
Yes.
good marketing comments.
Yeah, thank you. And keep the comments coming, everybody. So our next question is from Hans. And Hans, he basically, I'll just summarize this question because it's a little long. So he recently published a youth book with an augmented reality world connected to it in the Dutch language, which is pretty cool. And he wants to publish an English version in 2019, but needs a connection with an agent in the USA for production, printing, publishing, marketing, and distribution. So the question is, how do you go about finding a U.S. publisher or translator for a Dutch book? And more generally, how do you go about finding a translator for your book in general?
Okay, so translators are like editors. It's a search, and we often say about an editor, finding the right editor is like finding your spouse. It's the first couple of attempts might not do it. Finding a translator is even more challenging, I have to say, and there are a few reasons for that. If you have a grasp of the second language, which a lot of Dutch people have, of English, then that removes one of the big problems for translated works generally, which is that we don't know whether it's a good translation or not. And particularly when it comes to fiction, and it sounds like you're with augmented reality fiction, you're in a whole great zone. Even I don't know how important that aspect is around the translation and the conversations that you're going to have with them and so on. So I'm making it all sound very difficult, and it's challenging. However, it's being done all the time. People are finding good translators. There is a Translators Association, which is a member of the Alliance, and we will include the link to that. I don't have the link on here to hand, but we will include the link to that association in the show notes. And that's a very good place to start. These are all translators who are used to working with independent authors, and that's important too. You ask for an agent to seek a publisher. So that's a slightly different route. That's one route you could take to find a publisher who would then commission the translator and do it that way for you. But it's also possible for you to commission the translator and publish it yourself directly on English language platforms. So that's your first decision to make, I think, as to and the Translators Association that I'm suggesting. These are people who would work directly with you. Alternatively, then it's back to the normal, just pitch an agent, pitch a publisher, keep going until you find somebody who's interested in doing an English language version of your Dutch book. The higher your sales are in the Netherlands, the more likely you are to be able to find somebody like that. And finally, I will just say that ALLi is getting together again our link with PubMatch, which is a rights buyers platform. A way in which indie authors can organise under the ALLi umbrella your rights for sale, and so your English language rights to this Dutch work could be offered on PubMatch, and you could use that as the basis then to approach agents or sub-agents who might be interested in translating it into English. Cool. Michael, any thoughts?
No, you answered it better than I could. And Beth, comments again. Thanks, Beth. That's excellent. Associations are great resources. So
absolutely, yeah. They really are. And do use the comments, folks, for questions too. If we run out of members' questions and or questions that have been pre-submitted, we may be able to get to yours.
Yes. All right. So our next question is from William. And William asks, is it better to send readers to book 1 in my series or my series page on Amazon?
There are different ideas around this. I'm of the opinion that book 1 is the way to go, and not only send them to book one, but make book one, particularly if you're an unknown, make book one irresistibly easy for them to access. Lots of people make first book in a series free for that reason, with a plan for, you know, book two and so on. You may not want to do that, but certainly make book one easy for them to access. You might want to, if you're doing all the driving, if you're doing all the advertising to take them somewhere, and Amazon algorithm management is not part of your business plan, you might want to send them directly to your own website. And that is also a choice that you could make. But I think a series page is, I can see very much the logic of doing that way, but my choice would be book one. What about you, Michael?
Yeah, assuming you're talking about fiction, definitely book one. There's something to be said about psychological friction, right? And even just one more click, it sounds silly, but it's just resistance. And people, they don't want to have to work that hard. They don't want to have to think that hard, right? So you send them to book one, they can immediately buy book one. If you send them to the series page, then they've got to think for a second. Hey, how many books are in this series? Which book do I start with? You know, so just make it super easy. And there is, but that said, there is a time and a place for a series page, right? So on your author website, sometimes it might make sense to have a series page where it has each of the books on it, where you can click on them and go into them and read them. And sometimes it might make sense to have all of your books with all your different book descriptions on, you know, one page, so that, you know, they can start with book one, but if, you know, they're coming to your site to read book two or three, then they can have everything in one place. So I understand the logic behind it. And if you're promoting a box set or something like that, then maybe that might make sense to send people to a series page. But I think if you're just starting out, you don't have an audience and you're trying to promote that book and maximize your sales, I think sending people to book one is going to be the best option.
Okay, so that's two for book one. So yeah, have a go. The other thing to say is that with any of this, nobody can be sure what's going to work for you in your particular conditions, your particular book, your particular timing, and so on. So everything you do around this, it should be done in a spirit of experimentation. So if you do find yourself sending people to book one that doesn't work, you might try the series page. And if you find that both of those don't work, you might think about your covers. So we're always kind of not seeing our decisions around some of these creative decisions that we have to make. We're not seeing them as definitive, but exploratory, and that we're always learning, always changing, always refining, and always getting better at what we're doing.
Yep, absolutely. So, all right. Our next question is a copyright question, and this is asked by Tamsin Rush. And so she asks, what is the recommended way of copyrighting a book by multiple authors? Okay,
copyright is I'm living, breathing, smelling, dreaming copyright at the moment. We've just about to send our copyright bill of rights out to all our people who comment on our sort of official white papers and things. So we've done a lot of work on copyright in the last while. And actually, your question alerts me to the fact that we haven't put anything in there about group copyright, and it will go into the bigger book that we're planning called Copyright Matters, because we've got a lot of indies now doing collaborations and indies working in each other's worlds and so on and so forth. So copyright is the foundation on which all our income rests, and it's really important that you understand your rights and claim them first of all, and then assert them. So how do you copyright for a group? Essentially, everybody gets the little C sign and everybody has copyright in the book, but you need to draw up an agreement. You need to draw up an agreement between you. It doesn't have to be drawn up by a lawyer. It does need to be agreed by you all and signed by you all. And you need to decide how you're going to allocate any income that arises from this book and other stuff. So as I'm kind of answering your question, I'm thinking we should do a template for our legal and contracts page, which would give you an idea of the kinds of things that would need to go into that agreement. Copyright belongs to the author of a work automatically. In the US, it's advisable to register it. So you may want to register all the author names. I'm not sure if you are in the US. The rest of the world mostly takes the position that you don't need to register. Copyright belongs to the author, and in the event of a court case arising, all sorts of proof is accepted. But recent ruling in the US has said that the copyright must be registered in order for the court to kind of take it seriously. That hasn't been tested, may be challenged, and so on and so forth. But, you know, for ease of mind and so on, it's probably best if you are in the US to register. You probably have stuff to add, Michael.
Yeah, no, you said it all really well. What I would add is I've done collaborations in the past, and I can't stress how important it is to have an agreement between you or the two of you or the three of you or the six of you, you know, whatever that is. You know, so when I did my agreement, when I did my collaboration, the other author that I did it with, you know, we both agreed, you know, we both equally own the copyright. So that's what's going to be, that's the end result anyway, right? But just getting it on paper, I think, is important so that there are no misillusions or anything like that, because you definitely don't want to go into this assuming what, you know, that you own half of it or a third of it. You really want to make sure that that's laid out. Another thing with copyright that with multiple people, that's also important is also who owns who owns the copyright to other things, right? So it's not just the book, but what kind of marketing materials are you putting together? Who's doing the cover, right? Those sorts of things. You want to make sure you address those in your contract as well, because there are other copyrightable things that could come about as a result of your collaboration, and you just want to make sure that you're very clear who's going to own the copyright for those things as well.
Very much so. So with rights, with publishing rights generally, you've got the core rights, which you're probably thinking about, ebooks and print books and perhaps audiobooks in the English language. But as we were talking earlier, you've got possibility for translation rights, TV rights, all these kinds of things. Mm-hmm. These are called subsidiary rights. But other issues that can arise specifically around copyright, as well as all the day-to-day working things that Michael was mentioning there, decisions like how do you feel about free books? You know, so copyright protects your right to income, but indie authors will differ on how they might want to assert and protect that right. So one author might say, I never do free books, it devalues, you know, me as an author, whereas another person might say in this day and age, you got to do free books if you want to be discovered. So, you know, having the agreement and the different clauses that you'll have to work through on the agreement will make sure that you're all on the same page. And actually, how you agree together is far more important than what copyright means to the outside world, really.
Exactly. What happens if you get approached for a screenwriting deal? You know, what happens then? You know, what happens if one person does all the legwork? Does that person get a higher share of royalties? Or, you know, and then there's the whole Pandora's box of royalties that you have to think about too. So there's just so many moving pieces to this. Definitely check out the white paper that and the Copyright Bill of Rights that Orna is going to publish. So it's good stuff. All right. Next question is from Rob. And Rob asks, what is the difference between an ASIN and an ISBN? And second part to his question is, what is the difference between a 10-digit ISBN and a 13-digit ISBN?
Okay. Do you want to do the first part and I'll do the second?
Sure. So an ASIN, it just stands for Amazon Standard Identification Number, I think. That's a number that's assigned to every product that gets sold on Amazon. And it's really Amazon's internal tracking system. It's how they pull up items in the system. It's how you can search for things on Amazon if you needed to do it. It's used to run reports, right? So if you look at a lot of the data trawling services and companies, they use the ASINs to be able to run reporting and things like that. It's a unique identifier on Amazon. The ISBN it stands for International Standard. Oh gosh, I'm not even going to do it.
Yeah, it's hard. International International Standard Book Number. Yeah.
International Standard Book Number, exactly. So an International Standard Book Number differs in that that's issued by Bowker, or an advisory organization, and not all books will have an ISBN. Everything on Amazon is going to have an ASIN, but not necessarily an ISBN. That is something that you can purchase as a way to identify your book, to make it easy for book retailers or others to find your book, and to make sure it's kind of a professional way of doing it, right? But your book, an ebook, doesn't necessarily have to have an ISBN. Right, all printed books will have an ISBN of some kind. So to answer the question, on Amazon, a printed book is going to have an ASIN, and it's going to have an ISBN, right? But for an ebook, you don't necessarily need an ISBN, although some people are divided on whether you need it. So the key there is that the ASIN is issued by Amazon, ISBN is issued by here in the United States, Bowker, but different organizations across the globe.
Exactly, different organisations depending on where you live. So here in the UK, where I live, it's Nielsen. In France and Canada, it's the National Library, and their ISBNs are free. And just to say a few other things about ISBNs, the 10 versus 13 number thing is just a pure historical moment. Everything published up to, I think it was 2007, I couldn't swear the year, it needed a 10, and then so many books were being published, they needed to reform the book's standard number and give it more options, so it went up to 13. So now you will get a 13 digit number. ALLi recommends that you have your own ISBN for your ebooks as well as your print and your audio. And the indie community is very divided on this. And, we're not the ISBN police, so it's up to you totally. If you are only publishing on Amazon, you won't see at this point in time any disadvantages by not having an ISBN on your ebook. But as Michael rightly said, the ASIN is Amazon's cataloguing number. The ISBN is a book industry number, and it is especially for books, and it makes you the publisher of record for that book. So if a library, a bookshop, or anybody in a researcher, an academic researcher, anybody wants to find out who owns this book and where it was published, they go through the ISBN. The other use of it is that it tells that book buyer, that librarian, or whoever it is, what sort of book it is, so the ISBN will be tied into whether this edition of the book is an ebook, a print book, a book that was published in 2012 and then completely updated and republished in 2018. It tells people what they need to know in order to know whether the book is right for their customer or for their research or whatever it might be. So it makes you essentially the publisher of record when you own the ISBN. And though all the services, as well as Amazon, Kobo, Google, everybody will offer you, Ingram will offer you an ISBN, we recommend that you have your own. The reason they're offering it to you is it has value. So it's best to keep that value for yourself is kind of my advice.
Absolutely. And I know because the question is going to come up, because it's always the question that gets asked after we cover the ISBN stuff. You do need a different ISBN for each different format of your books. So you would want one ISBN for your ebook, another one for your paperback, another one for your hardcover, another one for your audiobook. That's just the best practice, right? It keeps everything cleaner when people are searching for your books as well.
Exactly, but you don't need one for an ebook on Amazon, one for an ebook on Apple, a different one for an ebook on another platform. Just the format. If you think about it from the end user's point of view, they want to know am I getting the large print book or am I getting an ebook? You know, and if they want to know, if they see one of them is priced at $4.99 and another one's priced at $8.99, another one's priced at $9.99. Why is that? Oh, okay, one's a hardback, one's paperback, and one's an ebook. So, you know, so yeah, one for each format that's identifiably different.
All right, so we have some great comments here. Beth Coleman Warner, back to our translation note, mentioned that another portal for translators is babbelcube.com. So I think we've written some articles on BabbelCube on our blog, so definitely one to check out if you're interested in that. Russell Phillips says, interesting side note, for paper books, Amazon uses the 10-digit ISBN as the ASIN. Interesting comment.
That's very interesting, and I did not know that, Russell. Thank you. You're always coming up with super interesting things that people don't know, so that's fascinating.
Fun fact of the day. All right, and Shaunik Justin, hello, amazing humans. Sorry I'm late from Australia. Well, thanks for joining us down under. Good stuff.
That's great, Shaunik. Welcome.
Yep, and then also mentions Amazon, don't mix a good book with Amazon's rules.
Yes, have your own rules. You're the indie. Amazon's just a supplier. It's just a distributor, an excellent one, a brilliant one, an innovative one that allowed indies to do what we do. But, you know, it's just one way to get your books to your readers. Do remember, you're the business. You are the author. You are the publisher.
Exactly. So, all right. Next question for us here is from Jillian. Actually, I'm sorry. So wrong one. I was looking at the wrong one here. So DF Hart asks, does a book have to have a Library of Congress number if it isn't going to be put into libraries? So to contextualize that, I believe they're referencing the United States Library of Congress.
Yes, no is the short answer. And I think this, if I may kind of say, this raises an interesting bigger point. I'm always doing this. The poor questioner asks a question, I answer the question, then tell them a whole load of stuff they probably don't want to know. But anyway, I think it's important that we recognize that when we become indie authors publishing digitally, and by digitally I mean ebooks, print on demand and audiobooks, all of which are digital formats, that we move beyond our own territory and become global authors. And that is a huge opportunity for us. And so the Library of Congress is a US body. And of course, people may want to approach libraries within their own territory. And of course, indies will always be, you know, we are located human beings. We are physically in one country, one territory or another. But it's really good for us to get outside our own territory because there are loads of opportunities outside of it. So the short answer to your question is no. And sort of the big answer is, you know, if you want to look at libraries, you can look at libraries in the US, but you can also look at libraries outside of there. And if you're not looking at libraries in the US, don't worry about a US body because it doesn't have reach globally. Each of the different territories are ruled by different, even copyright rules and different jurisdictions, different legalities around the book industry. But it is pretty uniform because of colonization, actually. It's pretty uniform across much of the world. So, of course, now indie channels and suppliers are going into countries that traditionally didn't have a books industry at all. So, yeah, I suppose the big point I'm trying to say is think globally. Even if you're acting locally, you might have a relationship with your local indie bookstore, but you can also have a relationship with a reader that's on the far side of the world from you.
Yeah, you know, just think about your dollars, right? It's you know, we've talked about ISBNs. Now we're talking about the Library of Congress number. You know, there are costs associated with these things, and you have to ask yourself, where's my dollar going to get the best bang for my buck, right? To use the tired expression. Are you going to be better served buying a Library of Congress number, right? Or are you going to be better served advertising on Facebook or advertising on Amazon? You know, I mean, just think about it like that. I mean, unless bookstores or libraries are the cornerstone of what you're doing, which I imagine most people listening to this, it's probably not. you probably can get a better value, and your time and money is probably better spent in other areas that are going to get you a return on your investment.
Definitely. I think if we're looking at libraries and bookshops, actually, it's from a personal passion perspective. It's not from a profit perspective. It can't be. It's kind of a lot of us fell in love with libraries when we were younger. We became writers because we had access to libraries in the days when, they meant a lot. I'm old enough to remember that, when the only way to get certain books was to go to the library. It was a physical thing. But don't let the romance of that kind of lead you off into thinking that it's a great thing to do for your author business. It isn't. It isn't.
And remember too that people put so much of their energy focusing on bookstores and libraries, when if you would just put that same energy into promoting your book and getting more sales of your book, that actually opens the door to getting you into libraries and bookstores long term, right? Instead of that being the thing that you chase. So, all right, our next question is from Irene. And the question is, where do I find a virtual assistant?
Well, virtual assistants are good authors' assistants are gold dust. So you can find a virtual assistant in lots of ways. There are, freelance hire places like Fiverr.com and many others where you can actually find people who advertise that they are available. ALLi has a directory of vetted suppliers, and there are a couple of assistants in there who have a lot of experience with authors. And I think this would be something that's worth getting. If you can get somebody who actually has worked with an indie author and understands, knows their way around the suppliers like Amazon and Kobo and Ingram and so on, understands what you're trying to do, so that you don't have to do a huge amount of training in sort of the basics of the background against which we must do our work, then that's helpful. But good author assistants are, it's hard to get them, because once they're good, they're snapped up and they're full pretty quickly. But you can start just by Googling virtual authors assistants or virtual assistants online and go from there as well. Any tips, Michael?
Yeah, I've hired a number of assistants over the years, and what I would say is, think about it like this: there are two different types of assistants. There are what I think Chris Ducker calls them the general VAs. So they're kind of the ones that can kind of do anything. They're just kind of your chief of staff, or they can answer emails, they can upload your books to Amazon, you name it. They probably could find some way to do it. And then you have VAs that you hire for more specific tasks. So, for example, I hire a video editor for my YouTube videos, where you pay them to do one thing or one or two things really, really well, but they're not necessarily going to help you with your emails or do, all kinds of other things. And so the first thing I always tell people with virtual assistants is, what do you want a virtual assistant for? Right? Is it because you really want to make sure you're hiring somebody that's going to get you a return on what you're paying them? Right? That's pretty important. So I've used Upwork in the past for assistants. I've had some success there, but I think that if you're going to look for a virtual assistant, I think you have to treat it like any other job, right? You have to do a job posting. You have to tell them exactly what you need, exactly what your expectations are, and I recommend an interview. Yeah. I mean, you really have to really get to know people in order to make sure that they're going to be a good fit for you. And there's a lot of things that you'll want to do your research on that. But I would definitely start with Upwork and definitely do an interview and just make sure you figure out why you qualify the candidates, right? Make sure that they're good for the job. And then there are other places as well that do a good job of rounding up virtual assistants. You can just do a quick Google search for those. I hate to recommend any because, I never know when people are going to listen to this. If you're listening to this 10 years from now, it could be drastically different. But they're definitely readily available. And I found some success, and I've seen a lot of people have success with assistants that don't necessarily help authors, but who do other other industries, like for online entrepreneurs, they could also be a fairly good fit for what you're doing online as well.
Definitely around social media and around, lots of things where indie authors are more like creative entrepreneurs than we are actually like authors. And I think it's also worth saying that if the kind of person you're looking for is a personal assistant who's just going to help you to get out of chaos, I've got too much to do and I don't know what I'm doing and blah, 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 don't go looking for that at first. Pick out one or two of the tasks that you absolutely need to be done. As Michael says, high value tasks that are likely to get a return for you, and go from there and test a little bit. The best way to, after you've done the interview and you like the person and they seem to be the right fit for you, then you test by giving them smaller tasks and then building up the size of the task over time. And then eventually maybe they become part of a team, and somebody you work very closely with. That's certainly been my trajectory over the years. People have come in, started doing small things and are still around 7 years later and now doing things, that I can't do, or I'm no good at doing, or they're better at doing, or whatever. So wherever you have a task that you're not good at, it is worth thinking about, or that drains you creatively, it is worth thinking about the money, spending that money to get you the time that would liberate you to do the things that only you can do. But it's tricky, and it's a balancing act, and it's something you build up very slowly and cautiously over the years.
Absolutely. All right. So our next question is from Jack. And Jack says, I am in need of several vetted beta readers to help me finalize my manuscript before publishing. Hopefully it might be fellow members with credentials. My historical fiction novel is a dual narrative and the start of a trilogy. Who might you recommend, and where do you recommend I find readers? Okay, well, within your genre community is a good place to find beta readers. We regularly have people doing call-outs on the ALLi forum for readers as well. There is a service actually, Beta Books, an ALLi partner member, which matches readers to authors. Among your own reading community is fantastic. When you get to the point that you have a few books and you have followers, it's wonderful to bring your own readers, close readers in, and have them read the books and feedback to you as they are released. Any other options, Michael? Yeah, so I did something kind of different with my last book. I actually paid beta readers. So you can go on a site like Upwork or any other place where people like to hang out, and you'll find, and it's a growing market, there are actually people that will actually beta read your book for a minimal charge. And some people probably think, why would you pay a beta reader, right? Historically, they're not people that you pay. But here's the thing. So I found, just in me, I've written 40 books, and I've almost given up on beta readers because bless their hearts, but sometimes they're just difficult to. It's difficult to get them to read your book, or to read the book by the deadline that you have, because they have lives, right? They have jobs, they have families, and they're doing this on the side, usually for philanthropic reasons, right? And so it can sometimes be difficult to get them to meet deadlines, for better or worse. And so I found that by putting a little bit of money in their pocket, that will help them. Help. I mean, it's a good incentive, right? to get paid to do something that you love. But also, a paid beta reader is a beta reader that also is more likely to meet their deadlines. And so, if you have a little bit of a budget to do that, that's something that you could consider as well. Yeah, and if you have the budget, you might want to think about skipping the beta process and just using a professional. To a developmental editor can be, the right person at the right price, can definitely help you enormously. And again, cut through the amount of time that you spend doing some of these things. So, if you're managing lots of readers and readers' responses and different files, and it's being sent out and questions are coming to you, and, all of that, that's time. It's all precious time.
So as indies, we're always weighing these two things, time versus money, because time for us really is money. The more time you can spend writing and publishing, getting more books out there and marketing, doing effective marketing, the better. So you might, I don't use beta readers, I just use editors.
Yeah, and I should clarify, when I say paying beta readers, I'm not saying just paying anybody who walks through the door. I pick like 2 people, 3 people, and I paid them, I think it was $30-$40, right, for their time to read the manuscript and give me comments. And the reason a reason that you might consider that is because you can find readers who are avid in your genre, right? So if you write cozy mysteries, find 2 avid, that's all they read, cozy mystery readers, and pay them a little bit for their time, and you can get some better feedback as well. So just wanted to clarify that, because I don't want people thinking I need to go out and pay all of my beta, or pay 20 beta readers or anything like that. Less is more in that case.
Absolutely, and it's a great idea, and it's not something I've heard of people doing in quite that way. So great to get another option.
Yep. All right. So that is all of our questions for the month.
Okay, great questions. Folks, if you want to submit a question for next month's show, you need to be a member of the Alliance of Independent Authors. The link to the submission form will be in the show notes and is also available on the website. And we are delighted to answer your questions in this way, because every question you ask has value for lots of authors besides yourself, people who are in exactly the same situation and position as you. So please do send us in your questions. We'll be here again on the second. No, we won't. We're live. Sorry. Yes, we're live normally on the Saturday, the second Saturday of the month at 1 p.m. London time, some god-awful time where Michael lives, but he gets up in the middle of the night and doesn't mind. So hopefully we'll see you back here then. You can also catch the podcast if you want to listen again. That will be released on the blog on Saturday next. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, everybody, and thanks for everyone who commented and watched and left reactions. It's been great.
Happy writing, happy publishing. See you next month.